Welcome to the Closing the Trust Gap podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to visit with leaders from a wide variety of vocations and industries who are unafraid to have honest conversations about how organizations can become more trustworthy. My name is Corey Shear, and I'm the founder and CEO of Trust Centric Consulting and the author of the book titled Closing the Trust Gap. I truly hope that this conversation is helpful and will inspire you to take action on strengthening trust. Well, welcome back to the Closing the Trust Gap podcast. It is great to be with you again. I am so excited for this episode today. Mitch Case, welcome to the show. You and I had coffee yesterday morning, and now we get to talk again. So 2 times in about 30 hours. And yesterday's conversation was incredible, and I can't wait to continue that dialogue for our listeners today. But Mitch, will you just take a moment to introduce yourself and share maybe a little bit about your family and then about the work that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you having me on, Corey. So my name is Mitch Case. I am a father to 3 young kids, 6 and under, and have been married to my beautiful wife for over 8.5 years, now getting ready to go on 9. Traditionally started off as a mechanical engineer, worked for a manufacturing company, found that I actually thrived more in a sales environment. So went into a sales world selling HVAC cooling equipment for about 10 years. Was rewarded financially through that process, but ultimately kind of lost myself as an individual and just chased money. And due to COVID, obviously being challenging for some, but it was a blessing in my eyes in the sense that it forced me to be home and made some personal changes. And through that, recognized I wanted to be more present as a husband and a father while building something that truly helped and served individuals. So my wife and I created a company called More Than a Meal, where we help organizations strengthen their most valued relationship, whether that is an employee or a client, by showing gratitude or appreciation one meal at a time. So we've been doing that now for about 3 years. And my day to day looks like talking with business owners and HR executives and trying to understand where they're at and where they want to go.
And Mitch, you and I, we didn't meet very long ago. It's probably been, maybe a couple of months since when we first
Yeah,
connected.
less than
And
6 months for sure.
yeah, it's been, and you and I've had a couple of conversations, but I think you and I have both, we've like converged on this really powerful concept of how do you equip people with empathy? How do you show them a practical, tangible, meaningful, memorable, durable way, an affordable way to demonstrate authentic empathy? And you and I have like wrestled with this. And I think the reason why I so appreciate the work that you do is because you all do this intuitively. It's like baked into the fiber of who you are as a company. It's your ethos. It's something that you do it naturally.
Yeah.
It's like Jedi where you don't even, it's not like you have to like explain it. You just do it. It's part of who you are, but you then activate it through this really powerful and simple blessing to employees or clients or whoever the person may be through a meal. And one of the things that, as I've been reflecting more and more about some of our conversations, where I think this is so powerful is that in our research, this research that Kurt Bartolich and I did with the National Survey on Brain and Trust, which led into my book and it's led to a lot of the work that I do with clients, we found that of the 3 building blocks of trust, of competency, problem solving, and then care for others, categorically and typically all of the time, the building block of trust that is the weakest of the 3 is care for others. And that building block includes things like listening. It includes things like empathy and sympathy and demonstrating care for the comprehensive needs of another person, not just their vocational needs. And
Yeah.
so when you and I connected and we had a couple of those original conversations, it resonated with me so much because I realized you all are doing something that is tactically and practically helping organizations and leaders and teams strengthen that building block of care for others. So I guess my question to you is, where does that even come from for you and your wife, Mitch, and for your company? Like, what is the origin story of why it's so important for you to live out this vital building block of caring for others?
Yeah. I would have to say, like right off the bat, I have learned a lot of empathy and what that looks like through my wife. My wife, she is a nurse. It was one of the things that she just knows that she was called to do from God in this place where she can truly help and serve an individual with the gifts that she's been given. So often she will receive the, quote unquote, tough patients because they're hard to deal with. But my wife has a unique way of caring for the person that's in the bed and not the patient that's in the bed. And so
Yeah.
after having dated her for a couple of years and now being married for over 8.5, I have a lot of that has fallen off on to me. And when I look at like where does that come from? How did I, intuitively go after this or understand this? A lot of it has been through trial and error. I would say
Mhm.
early on in my career, um, I thought I was the best thing that's ever came across, a typical millennial. And I sent out, I remember specifically one time sending out an email that is one of those emails that you probably should have let simmer in the drafts for like 48 hours. It was one
Yes.
of those moments in my young career that I mean, I got caught. I got called out, and it really humbled me in this scenario of very quickly realizing like it doesn't matter if you are throwing on bibs and an overall and going and working on an HVAC unit outside on a roof or a suit and tie.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves to be treated as a human being and respected. And
That's right.
when I sat out and had this mentor of mine and my boss at the time kind of sit me down and walk me through that, it's just been a very memorable moment for me. And like, I specifically remember that being 6 months into my young career, having that moment and just really humbling me and recognizing that every time I have an interaction, I don't know what that person is going through. I don't know what their scenario is. Shame on me for thinking that I might be better than that person or anything along those lines.
Mhm.
That's a moment in time that really helps me as I have dove into like this personal development and read books and listened to podcasts. What I saw with leaders that I highly respected was this innate ability to, you even talked about it, but just like purely listen because you can learn so much through listening. And I need to still be better at that. But that was a space for me that, as I continue to watch these leaders that I respected and wanted to be similar to when I, quote unquote, got older, was a
Mhm.
common that they were just always like listening before speaking. And that has just allowed me to have this unique skill set or ability where somebody once told me, like they said, what are the things that you're good at? And that's a really hard list to come up with because you do have to humble yourself. And I was struggling, and he just pointed out to me. He said, "Mitch, you have one of the most unique abilities to create trust in a short amount of time." And I had never
Mm.
recognized that, and it's still hard for me to like figure out and define that specifically. But I think it is truly due to when I meet somebody new, my first goal in that conversation is to quite honestly shut up and listen. And if there is a true way that I can help and serve that person, whether it's personally or professionally, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to hear that, see it, and take action on it if I can.
Yeah, and it's I've experienced that. That's exactly what I felt from when I first met you, and you actually connected me with a couple of other people, and those relationships have now continued and they've gotten stronger. And so even in that, you took action on that by connecting with other people, and then even following up, having more conversations, and even being open and receptive to perhaps a new way of even thinking about the impact and the power of your company with more than a meal. And I want to get into what I'd like to do is I'd love for you to kind of share the nuts and bolts of how your company works, what it would look like if I were to hire you to do what you do. But then I also want to reserve a good chunk of time to talk a little bit more about what is the transformation and the impact that you are seeing for those clients of yours that are really activating this approach to strengthening empathy, building trust with their employees or their clients. So let's begin though with the nuts and bolts of what is it that More Than a Meal does.
Yeah. So, like breaking it down from a nuts and bolts perspective, essentially what we provide is a really simple, convenient way for a business owner, an HR executive, a team member, or even friends and family to provide a really unique experience through a simple meal kit. So when something shows up on the doorstep, you're going to get your pre-cut, pre-measured, pre-diced, all of that info to just make sure it's a really simple process. Because ultimately, like this rabbit hole I go down through that I hope creates in this space is time around the dinner table for that individual. Whether, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe it is just a single individual, but time around the dinner table to reflect and be silent when maybe there's chaos around you.
Yeah.
And then raising my hand as a father of three, like that chaos looks different for us, but instilling that moment around the dinner table is always a way for us to connect in community and be engaged as a family. So it's just almost kind of that root thing that we always go to. Everybody wants to have that family dinner because it's community. It's not about the food. It's just being together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the nuts and bolts side of it. One of the things that we always try to like create is just a better experience for team members to engage with other team members to make sure that they know that they are cared for. Um, Kind of as a society, we traditionally think that we just go to flowers or gift cards when somebody is celebrating a new baby or having a loss of a loved one. Like that's what we
Mm.
typically do. But
Yeah.
one of the things that we wanted to create was the same idea of sending a one-off gift, but creating a simple meal that can get them out of the kitchen so they're not doing the hard work that nobody really wants to do, or you have that one ingredient that you needed to make it work and you don't have it, but really put that family around the dinner table through a really simple meal provided by an
Yeah.
organization that is truly trying to show that they care, support for the, as you said, like the whole person and not just the employee.
So the kit arrives in the mail, correct?
Yes.
So I let's kind of run a scenario. Let's say that, for example, um, I lost both of my parents a few years ago to COVID. It was a terrible, terrible time. The last thing that we wanted to think about was all the normal day to day things. Although that was all that we wanted to think about because we didn't want to have to worry about this really terrible season of grief. So
Right.
I imagine, let's say that my employer they would have worked with you behind the scenes. I don't even know that
Yeah.
maybe that we're a part of this as a company. I
Yeah.
received this meal kit in the mail. It's got my company name. It's got more than a meal. It's got clear instructions. All of it's pre-diced, cut, all of those things. There's instructions. I drop it into a crock pot. I turn the crock pot on. My family can continue to do what we're doing, whether it's grieving together or just relaxing together or taking a nap while this food is cooking. And then I just imagine I've shared this kind of thought with you, like this moment where you begin to smell the food heating up. And
Yeah.
now, you're 25, 30 minutes away from this meal being done. And then they take the crock pot lid off and the family comes and gathers around the table and we're still very much struggling with this season of grief or whatever the challenge is, and
Yeah.
we're eating this meal together. And now I imagine the next day my employer calls me and just says, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you got the meal in the mail. And then my employer says, how was that meal? And then I could just envision telling my employer it was so much more than a meal. Like that's what I think about with something like this. And so I would love to hear from you. How have you seen this actually transform a workplace culture?
Yeah. That is such a powerful question because it's one of the things that I enjoy most. When we go to our Google stars and reviews and everything, like the thing that I see the most now, we're a food company, so I always tell people like the food has to be good or it's just not gonna continue to work. We've lost the product side of things. So the food is good. But what I love and what continues to like give me that jolt of energy is the majority of our reviews have nothing to do with the food. It has this came at the right moment.
Yeah.
It this created a space for XYZ. Like that's truly like when we are reaching out and getting these reviews, and the fact that I get to see some of these come through is that jolt of energy. But even more so, I love when I hear back from the employer that sent the meal,
Yeah.
because that is where they start to recognize exactly what you talked, that there is a transformation happening within the organization, and that owner, that executive, that team leader, that manager, that team member sees the change in this individual because they're
Mm,
coming to them and just saying, thank you for taking care of me
yeah.
and my family, I should add, and not just thanks for the food.
Yeah,
Because
and
that's
yes.
the opportunity we have to change that situation. And you even like yesterday in our coffee, you said there are plenty of places that can go and bring you food. Like
Right.
you can go down and get a burrito at Chipotle, and it's going to be sustenance to feed your body. Um, but it's truly more than it's the experience, it's the care and compassion, it's the proactive approach versus like
Yes.
reactive. We got to get a gift card over to you really quick, and oh by the way, you're going to get taxed on that gift card because it's income
Yeah.
versus hey, this is a space where you can schedule this when you are ready because we know you're in and out of the hospital with some of the worst.
Yeah.
You can pick from these 20 different meals. It doesn't matter which one you want. Then we're going to deliver it wherever you're at, whether you had a house fire and you're stuck in a hotel and just isolated, or if you just need this delivered to your home because you're going through hell. Like
Mm.
those are the ways that we can create that experience for the employer that wants to show care, compassion, and in just a unique way.
And by equipping these employers, you also create this opportunity for like healthy contagion where, hey, well, we've got this is all set up with more than a meal and we utilize them. They're a partner with us, but we could do some other things internally, or hey, how do we do even more? Like that's the beauty, is that it isn't just about you all being a vendor or
Mm,
yep, this is you're the food provider and you're really, really good at the food side of it, but your heartbeat and what you specialize in is around the more than. And that's
mm,
what you're not only what you try to do, but also what you were challenging and equipping employers to be able to do. Because we know if you look at whether it's the research in my book or if you just Google any of the trust index from the last several years, trust is continuing to go down, down, down. We have such unbelievable opportunity with very simple things to make a major lasting difference within a workplace culture. And what better way to do it than with a tool like food? Because we all need it. And we're typically in such a hurry that we don't even pause and enjoy it. But you will equip these employers and these teams to be able to do that on behalf of their employees. So, one of the things I'd love to have you share is maybe just as you think about this work that you've done, which you have distribution capabilities to 30 states, right?
correct.
So this is not just a local, regionalized. I mean, you have a distribution network, and but I would love to hear from you when you think about all of the clients that you serve, all of the testimonials. What's one that really, really stands out to you?
Oh man. Um, that's a really deep question on that. This actually takes it back to an individual that we actually delivered a meal to, and this was before we were actually delivering through UPS, and this was us driving around. And it was a situation where a woman, a spouse, lost her husband. They were working in the yard together, and unfortunately, the gentleman had a heart attack and passed away right there.
Hmm.
Um, this was one of those meals that the day wasn't going well for me. It was on the absolute opposite side of town. It was going to waste so much time for me driving out to this individual to drop off a meal, but it was part of the job. So I jump in, I go, I'm heading down. I think it's actually towards Lawrence, and I get on. I don't even know some of the roads, the turnpikes or whatnot. And of course, like I miss my exit, so I have to go like 3 miles before I can turn around. So it's just bubbling even more.
Right.
I get on the phone. I call this woman, say, "Hey, I'm going to be there in about 2 minutes. You need to be present to receive it." She goes, "Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about it. I'm 20 minutes away. Can you just wait and I'll be there in just a few minutes?" And at this point, I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
boiling. I am
You're
not
over it.
happy.
Yeah.
I am done. I'm thinking about just slinging this thing on the doorstep and getting out because I've had it.
Mm.
Um, so she finally shows up. I'm dropping this meal off to her, and she goes, "You have no idea what this means to me." And I was like, "Well, okay." At this point, I don't know what's going on. And then she starts to share. Literally, we're in her front yard where her husband had his heart attack, where she had him while she was trying to help, and
Mm.
um, the closest medical person was still 20 minutes away because it was out in the sticks, and she couldn't do anything. And this meal was provided from a coworker of hers or the organization. I forget exactly. I ended up talking to this woman for 30, 45 minutes because I could tell she didn't need the meal. She needed to grieve. And
Yes.
I was the person at that moment that was available for her to talk through that. And I have never felt a moment in my life speaking to somebody that it was so fresh and raw. Come to find out, there
Right.
was a lot of financial challenges going on. There was a lot of other things going on, that this meal, this gesture, this experience that somebody else created for her allowed me to be in a position to take a deep breath and just be in that moment and hear this woman and just listen,
Yeah.
is something that I will never forget. And that is one of the root things for our company that I always try to stress when we're in the kitchen chopping and dicing, when we're vacuum sealing, when things aren't going right, when there's missing this and that. Like, this is the way that we can truly make an impact on an individual. And that is like that heart of the company. And, you know, you wrecked my mind yesterday when we had coffee. But it's truly like that idea of just so much more than, and that unique experience for me resonates so much more now, hearing from our conversation to looking back on one of those things that has truly impacted me from starting this business.
Well, Mitch, I'm so grateful for you and your wife and your vision for the company. I'm grateful for the work that you all do. And I'm also I just want to encourage our listeners, anybody who watches this, I want to encourage you to reach out to Mitch directly and to check this very practical, really, really helpful, equipping kind of tool to improve the empathy and the care that you demonstrate. Just to be able to have this as a resource that you can activate like that, to where you don't even have to scramble to think about it. It doesn't have to go to some planning person or office. Is like, no, this is just a part of. It's another resource that you have to extend, and it could be to an employee. It could be to an employee's family member. It could be to a client, could be to a strategic partner. It could be to a volunteer. I mean, there's so many. It could be to a neighboring tenant that
Mhm.
you have an office next to, whatever the case may be. But what is the best way, Mitch, for somebody to reach out to either you individually or to More Than a Meal more generally?
Yeah, I would say probably the best way to reach me is just finding me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there and typically am looking through all of the messages. So I should see it and respond to that. In the event that that's not working or anything, you can always go to our website, and we have like a chat box there, or even just filling out a form on there. It'll eventually get to me as I kind of lead our sales side as well. So I would just direct you to our website at morethan-a-mealco.com, and take a look around and see if it makes sense to have an additional conversation.
That's great. All right, last question. What is your favorite meal, Mitch?
Oh, without a doubt, mac and cheese.
The mac and
It
cheese.
has gone from, it doesn't matter if it's in the box or baked in the oven. I can eat a disgustingly amount of mac and cheese and be quite all right. I'm very grateful that God did not give me any sort of dairy allergies, because
Yeah.
that is, when it comes to gluttony, it's the mac and cheese for me.
Mitch, thank you. Thanks for the work that you all do. For the listeners who are interested in connecting, we'll have the contact information in our show notes. Please, please go check out More Than a Meal. Connect with Mitch on LinkedIn. Do something practical and tangible in order to strengthen this building block of trust. Live out empathy. Utilize this vital resource. And I guarantee you, when you do that, and Mitch can probably give you 1,000 testimonials, you will be blown away at what a meal as simple that can do, not only for the individual, but also for your workplace culture. So, Mitch, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to be on the call. And I look forward to our next mind blowing cup of coffee. Hopefully, it'll be sooner rather than later.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you for
Thank
having
you,
me on,
Mitch.
Corey. Appreciate it.
You bet.